Welcome to tonight's journey, welcome to tonight's story, designed specifically for sleep. You don't need to remember any of this. Please turn off your lights, find a comfortable position, and let your mind drift as we explore ancient mysteries. Together, the volume will gradually decrease after 50 minutes, allowing you to fade peacefully into sleep. Tonight, we journey back 3,000 years to the rolling hills of central Italy, long before Rome became an empire, when mysterious people called the Etruscans ruled the land. What secrets did they hide? Who were their forgotten gods? When did their civilization truly disappear? Where did their knowledge go? How did they influence the world we know today? In 1964, archaeologists discovered something extraordinary beneath a vineyard near Volterra, Italy. Hidden in a sealed chamber were bronze tablets covered in Etruscan script, seemingly describing rituals to contact divine beings. The tablets spoke of a sacred grove where mortals could speak directly with gods, of kings who ruled by divine mandate, and of prophecies that shaped the destiny of Italy itself. But these tablets vanished from the archaeological record within months of their discovery, leaving only fragmentary notes and whispered rumors among scholars. The Etruscans emerged in central Italy around 800 BCE, creating a sophisticated civilization that would profoundly influence Roman culture. They built magnificent cities like Tarquinia, Cerveteri, and Vigi, each ruled by powerful kings who claimed direct communication with the gods. Their society was remarkably advanced for its time, with complex religious practices, elaborate burial customs, and artistic achievements that rivaled ancient Greece. Archaeological evidence reveals that Etruscan cities were masterfully planned, with sophisticated drainage systems, paved roads, and multi-story buildings. Their tombs, carved into hillsides and decorated with vivid frescoes, provide glimpses into their daily life and religious beliefs. These paintings show banquets, dances, athletic competitions, and mysterious rituals involving figures that appear to be communicating with otherworldly beings. The Etruscan language remains partially undeciphered, despite thousands of inscriptions found throughout central Italy. While scholars can read basic funerary texts and religious formulas, longer documents continue to puzzle linguists. This linguistic mystery adds to the enigmatic nature of Etruscan civilization, leaving us to wonder what knowledge was lost when their culture was absorbed into the expanding Roman Republic. Etruscan religion centered around divination and communication with the divine realm. Their priests, called haruspices, read omens in the flight patterns of birds, the shapes of clouds, and most famously, in the organs of sacrificed animals. This practice, known as haruspicy, was so respected that Romans continued to consult Etruscan haruspices for centuries after conquering Etruscan territories. The Etruscans believed that gods actively participated in human affairs, sending signs and messages through natural phenomena. Their religious texts, written on linen books called limbri linti, described elaborate ceremonies for interpreting divine will. According to fragmentary Roman sources, these books contained detailed instructions for temple construction, city planning according to divine blueprints, and rituals for ensuring divine favor. One particularly intriguing aspect of Etruscan culture was their concept of sacred kingship. Etruscan kings were not merely political leaders, but were considered intermediaries between the mortal and divine realms. They wore purple robes, golden crowns, and carried ivory scepters, symbols that Romans would later adopt for their own rulers. Archaeological evidence suggests that Etruscan kings underwent elaborate coronation ceremonies that lasted for days, involving complex rituals designed to secure divine approval for their rule. The mysterious tablets discovered near Volterra, allegedly, described one such coronation ceremony for a king named Velcakna, who ruled in the 6th century BCE, according to the fragmentary translations that survived. Velcakna claimed to have received his crown directly from the god Tinia, the Etruscan, equivalent of Jupiter, during a vision in a sacred grove. The tablets described this grove as a place where the boundary between the mortal and divine worlds became thin, allowing direct communication with the gods. What makes this account particularly fascinating is that similar groves are mentioned in various Etruscan inscriptions found throughout central Italy. These sacred spaces, called fanum in Latin or perhaps something similar in Etruscan, were apparently scattered across the landscape, each associated with specific deities and particular types of divine communication. Archaeological surveys have identified possible locations for several of these groves, often marked by unusual stone arrangements and deposits of votive offerings. The Roman historian Livy, writing centuries later, mentioned that Etruscan kings possessed books of prophecy that predicted the future of Italy. These prophecies, known as the Etrusca Dispana, allegedly foretold the rise and fall of civilizations, the founding of Rome, and even events that would occur in the distant future. Roman sources claim that these prophecies accurately predicted their own conquest of Etruscan territories, suggesting either remarkable prescience or later historical revision. Modern archaeological evidence supports some aspects of these ancient accounts while raising new questions. Excavations at Etruscan sites have revealed sophisticated astronomical observations built into temple alignments and city planning. The Etruscans clearly possessed advanced knowledge of celestial movements, which they incorporated into their religious practices and urban design. This astronomical expertise may have contributed to their reputation for accurate prophecy and divine communication. As we drift deeper into sleep tonight, we carry with us these ancient mysteries. The Etruscans left behind magnificent artworks, mysterious inscriptions, and archaeological puzzles that continue to intrigue scholars today. Their influence on Roman culture was profound and lasting, yet so much about their civilization remains unknown. In the gentle darkness of sleep, perhaps we can imagine walking through their sacred groves, hearing whispers of ancient wisdom, and feeling the presence of gods who once spoke directly to mortal kings in the hills of Italy. The sacred grove of Tineath, morning mist clings to the hillsides near modern-day Viterbo, just as it did 3,000 years ago when this land belonged to the Etruscans. Archaeological surveys conducted in the 1970s identified an unusual circular arrangement of ancient stones hidden within a dense grove of oak trees. Local farmers had long avoided this area, passing down stories of strange lights and whispered voices heard on moonless nights. When researchers finally excavated the site, they discovered evidence of continuous ritual activity spanning over 5 centuries. The grove, tentatively identified as a sanctuary dedicated to Tinea, the Etruscan sky god, contained layers of votive offerings dating from the 7th to the 2nd centuries BCE. Bronze figurines, ceramic vessels, and gold jewelry lay buried beneath centuries of fallen leaves and soil. Most intriguingly, archaeologists found a series of stone altars arranged in a precise geometric pattern that aligned with specific constellations visible in the ancient Italian sky. Etruscan religious practices differed significantly from those of their Greek and Roman neighbors. While Greeks built magnificent temples to house their gods, Etruscans often preferred natural settings like groves, springs, and caves for their most sacred rituals. They believed that certain locations possessed inherent spiritual power, places where the divine realm intersected more readily with the mortal world. These sacred spaces, marked by natural features rather than monumental architecture, created intimate settings for direct communication with the gods. The stone arrangement at the Viterbo Grove follows a pattern found at other Etruscan religious sites throughout central Italy. 12 large stones form an outer circle, with 3 smaller altars positioned at the center. This configuration appears to represent the Etruscan understanding of cosmic order, with the outer stones corresponding to celestial regions governed by different deities. The central altars likely served as focal points for rituals designed to channel divine communication. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the altar deposits suggests that major ceremonies occurred at regular intervals, possibly aligned with astronomical events like solstices and equinoxes. Burned remains of specific plants, juniper, oak, and laurel, indicate that Etruscan priests carefully selected offerings based on their symbolic associations with particular gods. Chemical analysis of residue on bronze vessels reveals traces of wine, honey, and aromatic resins imported from distant Mediterranean regions. The alleged Volterra tablets, if they truly existed, describe ceremonies conducted in similar groves throughout Etruscan territory. According to the surviving fragments of translation, these rituals followed elaborate protocols designed to ensure successful divine communication. Participants underwent purification ceremonies lasting several days, consuming only specific foods, and wearing garments of particular colors and materials. The king or high priest would enter the grove at dawn, carrying bronze mirrors polished to reflect the first rays of sunlight. Etruscan mirrors, thousands of which survive in museum collections worldwide, often depict scenes of divine communication. These bronze objects, polished to a brilliant shine, show gods and mortals engaged in intimate conversations, with deities offering guidance, warnings, and prophecies. The mirrors may have served practical purposes in ritual contexts, possibly used to focus light or create visual effects that enhanced the perceived presence of divine beings. The concept of divine kingship played a central role in Etruscan society and religion. Unlike later Roman emperors who claimed divine status after death, Etruscan kings were considered living intermediaries between gods and mortals. Their authority derived not from military conquest or popular support, but from their ability to interpret divine will and maintain cosmic harmony. This sacred responsibility required constant communication with the gods through various forms of divination and ritual practice. Archaeological evidence from Etruscan royal tombs supports this interpretation of sacred kingship. The tomb of the Regalini Gallici family, discovered near Cerveteri in the 19th century, contained grave goods that clearly indicated royal status. Gold crowns, ivory scepters, bronze mirrors, and ceremonial weapons lay arranged around the central burial, along with hundreds of smaller objects, suggesting royal involvement in religious ceremonies. The tomb's layout, with multiple chambers connected by narrow corridors, may have symbolically represented the king's journey between mortal and divine realms. The mysterious Velcacna, mentioned in the alleged Volterra tablets, supposedly ruled the city of Velithri, modern Volterra, during the 6th century BCE. Historical records from this period are fragmentary, but archaeological evidence confirms that Volterra was indeed a major Etruscan center during this time. The city's impressive walls, still partially visible today, enclosed a population of perhaps 20,000 people engaged in mining, metalworking, and trade with Mediterranean partners. Velkokna's claimed communication with Tenya, allegedly, occurred during a 7-day ritual conducted in the sacred grove outside Volterra. According to the tablet translations, the king fasted for 3 days before entering the grove at sunrise on the summer solstice. He carried a bronze mirror, a golden cup filled with wine mixed with honey, and a laurel branch cut from a tree struck by lightning. These objects, each symbolically associated with different aspects of divine power, were arranged on the central altar as the king awaited divine contact. The account describes Velkokna falling into a trance-like state as the sun reached its zenith on the solstice day. During this altered consciousness, he reportedly received visions of future events affecting his kingdom and instructions for governing according to divine will. The god Tenya allegedly appeared as a figure of brilliant light, speaking in a voice like distant thunder, while bestowing upon the king a golden crown that symbolized divine approval of his rule. Modern scholars debate whether such accounts represent genuine religious experiences, sophisticated political theater, or later mythological embellishments. However, the consistency of similar stories throughout Etruscan territory suggests that divine communication rituals were indeed central to their conception of legitimate rulership. The elaborate nature of these ceremonies, requiring significant resources and careful timing, indicates their crucial importance in maintaining social and political order. The sacred grove near Viterbo continued to receive votive offerings long after Roman conquest of Etruscan territories. Roman coins found among the deposits suggest that local populations maintained traditional religious practices even as political control shifted to Roman administration. This continuity of sacred site usage demonstrates the enduring power of places considered spiritually significant, transcending changes in political leadership and cultural dominance. As sleep approaches tonight, we can imagine ourselves walking through that ancient grove, feeling the presence of mysteries that have puzzled scholars for generations. The stones still stand in their geometric patterns, and the oak trees still rustle with whispers of ancient secrets. Perhaps in dreams, we might glimpse the brilliant figure that Velkokna claimed to see, or hear the thunder voice of Tenya, offering wisdom to those who seek divine guidance in sacred places. The haruspices and their hidden knowledge in the soft light of dawn, an Etruscan priest carefully examines the liver of a sacrificed sheep. His trained eyes read patterns invisible to others, the shape of lobes, the color of vessels, the texture of different regions. This practice, called haruspicy, formed the cornerstone of Etruscan divination and would eventually become one of their most lasting contributions to Roman religious practice. The priests who performed these rituals, known as haruspices, possessed knowledge that took decades to master and was passed down through carefully guarded family traditions. The origins of haruspicy remain shrouded in mystery. Some scholars suggest it developed from ancient Mesopotamian practices, possibly transmitted through trade contacts or cultural exchange. Others argue that it represented a uniquely Etruscan innovation, born from their distinctive understanding of divine communication. Archaeological evidence indicates that the practice was already well established by the 7th century BCE, when elaborate bronze models of sheep livers began appearing in Etruscan tombs and temples. One of the most remarkable artifacts related to Etruscan divination is the bronze liver of Piacenza. Discovered in 1877, this bronze model, dating from the 1st century BCE, bears inscriptions dividing the liver into sections associated with different deities. The liver essentially served as a map of the heavens, with each region corresponding to specific gods and their areas of influence. This sophisticated system allowed haruspices to interpret divine messages by observing how natural variations in actual sheep livers corresponded to the sacred template. The training of haruspices began in childhood within hereditary priestly families. Young candidates spent years memorizing the names and attributes of dozens of deities, learning to recognize subtle signs in animal organs, and studying the complex relationships between divine beings and earthly events. The knowledge was carefully guarded, passed down orally rather than committed to writing where it might be accessed by unauthorized individuals. This secretive tradition contributed to the mysterious reputation of Etruscan religious practices. Roman sources describe Etruscan haruspices as possessing almost supernatural insight into future events. The Roman historian Cicero, while skeptical of divination in general, acknowledged that Etruscan priests had accurately predicted several significant historical events. Their reputation was so strong that Roman leaders regularly consulted haruspices during military campaigns, major construction projects, and important political decisions. This practice continued well into the imperial period, demonstrating the enduring respect for Etruscan divinatory expertise. The alleged Volterra tablets contained detailed descriptions of haruspicy techniques that supposedly went beyond standard practices. According to the fragmentary translations, certain haruspices could read not only immediate future events, but also prophecies extending centuries into the future. These long-term predictions were said to be written in a special section of the liver, visible only to priests who had undergone additional initiation ceremonies in sacred groves like the one dedicated to Tinia. Archaeological excavations at Etruscan religious sites have uncovered evidence of sophisticated ritual preparations for divination ceremonies. Ceremonial knives, bronze vessels for collecting blood, and specialized tables for organ examination show that haruspicy involved elaborate protocols designed to ensure accurate divine communication. The physical remains suggest that these rituals were public performances conducted before audiences of nobles and citizens who relied on priestly interpretations to guide important decisions. The relationship between haruspices and Etruscan kings was particularly close. Royal decisions required divine approval, obtained through various forms of divination, including haruspicy, observation of bird flight patterns, and interpretation of lightning strikes. Kings maintained personal haruspices who accompanied them on military campaigns and advised them on matters of state policy. This intimate connection between political leadership and religious guidance created a system where spiritual authority and temporal power were inseparably intertwined. One of the most intriguing aspects of Etruscan divination was its alleged ability to predict the lifespan of civilizations themselves. The Etrusca Disciplina, their collection of religious knowledge, supposedly contained prophecies about the duration of Etruscan dominance and the eventual rise of other powers in Italy. These predictions, if they existed, may have influenced Etruscan responses to growing Roman pressure during the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE. The gradual Roman conquest of Etruscan territories did not immediately eliminate haruspicy. Instead, Romans recognized the value of Etruscan divinatory expertise and incorporated it into their own religious practices. Colleges of haruspices were established in Rome, with membership limited to individuals who could demonstrate authentic Etruscan lineage and proper training in traditional techniques. This institutionalization helped preserve Etruscan religious knowledge even as their political independence disappeared. The secret knowledge of haruspices extended beyond simple divination into areas that modern scholars might classify as early psychology or medicine. Etruscan priests apparently understood connections between mental states and physical symptoms, using their observations of animal organs to diagnose and treat various ailments. Bronze tablets found at healing sanctuaries describe treatments that combine spiritual purification with practical medical interventions, suggesting a holistic approach to health and wellness. The transmission of haruspicy knowledge faced significant challenges during periods of political upheaval. When Roman armies conquered Etruscan cities, many priestly families were killed, enslaved, or forced into exile. The oral traditions that preserved divinatory techniques were disrupted, leading to the gradual loss of sophisticated practices that had developed over centuries. By the late imperial period, Roman haruspices were often criticized for their inferior skills compared to their Etruscan predecessors. Modern attempts to understand Etruscan divination have been hampered by the secretive nature of the original practices. While we possess bronze liver models and inscriptions describing basic procedures, the subtle interpretive techniques that distinguished master haruspices from novices were never written down. Archaeological evidence provides glimpses of ritual, contexts, and material culture, but the actual process of reading divine messages in animal organs remains largely mysterious. The psychological dimensions of haruspicy deserve consideration alongside its religious and political functions. The practice required haruspices to enter focused mental states that enhance their ability to perceive subtle patterns and make intuitive connections. This altered consciousness, combined with years of training and cultural expectation, may have genuinely enabled practitioners to access insights unavailable through ordinary observation. The effectiveness of their predictions could have resulted from heightened awareness rather than supernatural intervention. The influence of Etruscan divination extended far beyond Italy, spreading throughout the Roman Empire as conquered territories. Adopted Roman religious practices. Archaeological evidence of haruspicy appears in provinces from Britain to Egypt, carried by Roman colonists and soldiers who maintained traditional approaches to divine consultation. This cultural diffusion ensured that Etruscan religious innovations continued to influence Mediterranean spirituality long after their creators had disappeared from history. Tonight, as consciousness fades into sleep, we might imagine the careful hands of an ancient haruspice reading patterns that spoke of destiny and divine will. Their knowledge, passed down through generations of carefully trained practitioners, offered glimpses into futures that ordinary mortals could not perceive. In the gentle darkness of sleep, perhaps we too might sense the subtle signs that connect present moments to the flowing currents of the prophecies of the Etrusca discipline are deep within the archives of ancient Roman temples. Priests carefully guarded scrolls written in the mysterious Etruscan language. These documents, collectively known as the Etrusca Disciplina, contained what Romans believed to be the most accurate prophetic knowledge available in the ancient world. The scrolls allegedly predicted not only immediate future events, but also the rise and fall of entire civilizations, the founding of great cities, and even catastrophes that would not occur for centuries after their writing. The Etrusca consisted of three main categories of knowledge: the Librae Haruspicini, which contained instructions for divination through examination of sacrificial animals; the Librae Fulgurales, which described methods for interpreting lightning and thunder; and the Librae Rituals, which provided guidelines for religious ceremonies and temple construction. Together, these texts formed a comprehensive system for understanding and predicting divine will, passed down through generations of Etruscan priests and eventually preserved by Roman religious authorities. According to Roman historians, the most remarkable aspect of these prophetic texts was their apparent accuracy in predicting long-term historical developments. The scrolls allegedly contained specific prophecies about the founding of Rome, the expansion of Roman territory, and even the eventual decline of Roman power. These predictions were said to be so detailed and accurate that Roman emperors regularly consulted them when making major political and military decisions. The origins of the Etruscan disciplina remain mysterious. Some ancient sources claimed that the knowledge was revealed directly by gods to early Etruscan priests during divine apparitions. Others suggested that it was discovered in underground chambers by farmers plowing their fields, written on bronze tablets by unknown authors. The most intriguing theory, mentioned in fragmentary Roman sources, was that the prophecies were dictated by a divine child who appeared to Etruscan priests in the 8th century BCE. This divine child, known in Latin sources as Tags, allegedly emerged from freshly plowed earth near the city of Tarquinia. Witnesses described him as having the wisdom of an ancient sage despite his youthful appearance. According to the legend, Tag spent several days teaching Etruscan priests the fundamental principles of divination and prophecy, before disappearing as mysteriously as he had arrived. The knowledge he imparted supposedly formed the core of the Etruscan disciplina. Archaeological evidence provides some support for the antiquity of Etruscan prophetic traditions. Inscriptions dating from the 7th century BCE contain references to divinatory practices, and bronze models used in divination ceremonies show sophisticated understanding of religious symbolism. However, the actual texts of the Etruscan disciplina have not survived, leaving scholars to reconstruct their contents from fragmentary quotations in Roman sources. The alleged Volterra tablets may have contained portions of the Etruscan disciplina related specifically to divine kingship and sacred grove rituals. According to the rumored translations, these texts described a cyclical view of history in which civilizations rose and fell, according to divine plans spanning multiple centuries. Each cycle supposedly lasted for a predetermined number of years, with specific signs marking the transition from one historical period to the next. The concept of historical cycles was central to Etruscan religious thought and distinguished their worldview from that of their Greek and Roman neighbors. While Greeks and Romans generally viewed history as a series of unique events, Etruscans apparently believed that divine forces operated according to predictable patterns that could be understood through proper interpretation of signs and omens. This cyclical understanding of time may have contributed to their reputation for accurate, long-term prophecy. Roman sources describe several specific prophecies from the Etruscan disciplina that allegedly came true with remarkable precision. One prophecy supposedly predicted the exact year of Rome's founding, centuries before Romulus and Remus established their city on the Tiber River. Another allegedly foretold the Roman conquest of Etruscan territories, describing the specific sequence of cities that would fall to Roman armies. Most remarkably, some prophecies were said to predict events that occurred during the late imperial period, hundreds of years after the original Etruscan civilization had been absorbed into the Roman Empire. The preservation of Etruscan prophetic knowledge within Roman religious institutions created interesting tensions between traditional Roman religion and imported Etruscan practices. Conservative Romans sometimes criticized the influence of foreign divination methods, preferring traditional approaches like augury interpretation of bird flight patterns that they considered authentically Roman. However, the apparent accuracy of Etruscan prophecies ensured their continued consultation by Roman leaders despite occasional cultural resistance. The training required to interpret the Etruscan Disciplina was extraordinarily demanding, requiring decades of study under master practitioners. Students had to learn not only the Etruscan language, but also complex symbolic systems, astronomical observations, and ritual procedures that varied according to specific circumstances. The knowledge was closely guarded within hereditary priestly families who carefully controlled access to advanced techniques. This exclusivity contributed to the mysterious reputation of Etruscan religious practices and may have been deliberately cultivated to enhance the prestige of practitioners. The decline of the Etruscan Disciplina began during the late Republican period as political upheavals disrupted traditional priestly families and their oral traditions. The Roman civil wars of the 1st century BCE killed or displaced many experts in Etruscan divination, leading to a gradual loss of sophisticated interpretive techniques. By the imperial period, Roman haruspices were often criticized for their inferior skills compared to their Etruscan predecessors, suggesting that crucial knowledge had already been lost. The final disappearance of the Etruscan Disciplina texts probably occurred during the early Christian period when traditional Roman religious practices were suppressed or abandoned. Christian authorities viewed pagan divination as incompatible with their religious teachings and actively discouraged or prohibited such practices. The ancient scrolls containing Etruscan prophetic knowledge were likely destroyed during this period, along with many other documents considered religiously objectionable. Modern scholars have attempted to reconstruct the contents of the Etruscan Disciplina from scattered references in Roman literature, but these efforts have been largely unsuccessful. The complex symbolic systems and specialized terminology used in Etruscan divination cannot be fully understood without access to the original texts and the oral traditions that accompanied them. Archaeological discoveries continue to provide new insights into Etruscan religious practices, but the prophetic knowledge that once guided kings and emperors remains largely inaccessible to contemporary researchers. The psychological appeal of the Etruscan Disciplina extended beyond its alleged accuracy in predicting future events. The texts of the underground chambers of Villa beneath the ancient Etruscan city of Villi. Archaeologists have discovered a network of tunnels and chambers that challenges our understanding of Etruscan engineering and religious practices. These subterranean spaces, carved directly from volcanic rock, extend 4 kilometers beneath the ancient city and may have served purposes that remain mysterious to modern researchers. Local legends speak of secret ceremonies conducted in perpetual darkness, where priests communicated with underworld deities and kings received visions that guided their earthly rule. The city of Vigila, located just north of Rome, was one of the most powerful Etruscan centers during the 6th and 5th centuries BCE. Its strategic position controlled important trade routes between northern Italy and the Mediterranean, generating wealth that funded magnificent public works and private luxury. Archaeological evidence reveals a sophisticated urban center with paved streets, elaborate drainage systems, and monumental temples that rivaled those of contemporary Greek cities. The underground chambers were first systematically explored in the 1950s by Italian archaeologists, who initially assumed they were simple storage areas or cisterns for water collection. However, further investigation revealed architectural features suggesting more complex functions. Elaborate carvings decorated some chamber walls, bronze fixtures indicated ritual lighting systems, and stone altars showed evidence of repeated ceremonial use. These discoveries suggested that the underground spaces served important religious or civic purposes beyond simple utilitarian storage. The tunnel system connects various parts of the ancient city through a network of passages wide enough for multiple people to walk abreast. Engineering analysis indicates that the tunnels were carefully planned and constructed over many decades, possibly centuries, requiring sophisticated understanding of geology and structural engineering. The consistent quality of workmanship throughout the system suggests centralized planning and significant financial investment by Etruscan authorities. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the chambers indicates continuous use from the 7th century BCE through the Roman period, spanning over 6 centuries of activity. This longevity suggests that the underground spaces served functions considered essential by successive generations of inhabitants. The variety of artifacts discovered in different chambers, religious objects, bronze tools, ceramic vessels, and personal ornaments indicates diverse activities conducted in these subterranean spaces. One of the most intriguing chambers contains what appears to be an artificial pool carved directly from the rock floor. Chemical analysis of residue suggests that the pool was filled with water mixed with various substances, including wine, honey, and aromatic oils. Stone channels around the pool's perimeter would have allowed controlled drainage and refilling, indicating repeated ceremonial use rather than simple water storage. The pool's precise circular shape and elaborate surrounding carvings suggest ritual significance. The alleged Volterra tablets may have described similar underground facilities in other Etruscan cities, referring to them as sacred spaces where kings underwent initiation ceremonies that confirmed their divine authority to rule. According to the rumored translations, these subterranean rituals involve symbolic death and rebirth, with candidates spending extended periods in darkness before emerging with enhanced spiritual authority. The underground setting, apparently, symbolized the realm of underworld deities who controlled the transition between life and death. Etruscan beliefs about the afterlife differed significantly from those of their Greek and Roman contemporaries. While Greeks generally viewed death as a journey to distant underworld realms, Etruscans apparently believed that the spirits of the dead remained closely connected to earthly locations, particularly burial sites and sacred spaces. This belief system may have motivated the construction of elaborate underground facilities where living rulers could communicate directly with deceased predecessors and underworld deities. The chamber decorations include motifs that appear throughout Etruscan art but take on special significance in underground contexts. Serpents, which symbolized underworld powers and divine wisdom, are carved into wall surfaces alongside images of plants that grow in darkness. These decorative elements suggest that the chambers were designed to evoke the underworld realm, creating appropriate settings for rituals involving communication with chthonic deities. Archaeological evidence indicates that access to the underground chambers was carefully controlled. Narrow entrance passages could be sealed with stone slabs, and guardrooms near chamber entrances contained evidence of permanent occupation. This security suggests that the underground activities were restricted to specific individuals or groups, possibly including only the highest-ranking priests and political leaders. The secretive nature of these facilities adds to their mysterious character and suggests their crucial importance in Etruscan society. The acoustic properties of the chambers have attracted attention from researchers studying ancient ritual practices. The curved stone walls and ceiling configurations create unusual sound effects, amplifying whispers while muffling louder noises. These acoustic characteristics may have been deliberately incorporated into the chamber designs to enhance ritual experiences, creating auditory effects that participants could interpret as supernatural communications or divine presence. Roman sources describe Etruscan kings as possessing special knowledge gained through communication with underworld deities. The underground chambers at Vigi and similar sites may have been the physical locations where such communications occurred. The combination of darkness, acoustic effects, aromatic substances, and religious symbolism would have created powerful psychological environments conducive to altered states of consciousness and mystical experiences. The decline of the underground chambers began with Rome's conquest of Vigi in 396 BCE. After a legendary 10-year siege, Roman forces destroyed many Etruscan religious sites, viewing them as centers of resistance to Roman authority. However, some chambers appear to have continued in use during the early Roman period, possibly serving similar functions for Roman officials who recognized the value of traditional religious practices. The gradual abandonment of the underground facilities coincided with broader changes in religious practices during the late Republican and early imperial periods. As Roman culture increasingly emphasized public religious ceremonies conducted in daylight, the secretive underground rituals of the Etruscans may have seemed obsolete or politically suspicious. The chambers were eventually sealed and forgotten, remaining hidden beneath accumulated soil and debris for nearly 2 millennia. Modern exploration of the Vigi underground complex continues to reveal new chambers and passages, suggesting that much of the system remains undiscovered. Ground-penetrating radar surveys indicate additional void spaces beneath unexplored areas of the ancient city, potentially containing chambers that have remained sealed since antiquity. These unexplored spaces may hold artifacts and inscriptions that could provide new insights into Etruscan religious practices and political organization. The psychological impact of spending time in these underground chambers must have been profound. For ancient participants, the lightning readers and storm prophecies thunder rolls across the Etruscan countryside as priests hurry to their observation posts, bronze instruments in hand, ready to read the messages written in the language of lightning and storm. For the Etruscans, thunderstorms were not merely weather phenomena, but divine communications, requiring immediate interpretation by specialists trained in the complex art of fulgurology, the reading of lightning strikes and thunder patterns. These storm readers possessed knowledge that could predict everything from harvest outcomes to the fate of kings, making them among the most influential figures in Etruscan society. The Libre Diales, one of the 3 main sections of the Etrusca Disciplina, contained detailed instructions for interpreting lightning and thunder. According to Roman sources, these texts described how different types of lightning strikes conveyed different messages from specific deities. The direction from which lightning came, the time of day it occurred, the sound patterns of accompanying thunder, and the objects it struck all contributed to the overall divine message that trained interpreters could decode. Etruscan cities were designed with fulgurology in mind, incorporating observation platforms and specialized buildings where priests could safely monitor storms while recording their observations. Archaeological excavations at sites like Tarquinia and Cerveteri have revealed structures that appear to have served these purposes: elevated platforms with clear views of the horizon, equipped with bronze instruments for precise measurement of lightning directions and timing devices for recording the sequence of thunderclaps. The training of fulgurati, as lightning readers were called, began in childhood with memorization of complex classification systems for different types of electrical phenomena. Students learned to distinguish between various categories of lightning based on color, intensity, duration, and associated atmospheric conditions. Advanced practitioners could allegedly predict not only immediate consequences of specific storms, but also long-term trends affecting entire regions based on seasonal patterns of lightning activity. One of the most sophisticated aspects of Etruscan fulgurology was its integration with astronomical observations. Lightning readers maintained detailed records of storm patterns throughout the year, correlating electrical activity with the positions of celestial bodies and seasonal changes. This data, accumulated over generations, enabled them to identify recurring cycles and make predictions about future weather patterns that must have seemed remarkably accurate to their contemporaries. The alleged Volterra tablets contained references to a legendary fulgurator named Vel Spurina, who supposedly served King Velcagna during the 6th century BCE. According to the fragmentary translations, Vel Spurina could read not only immediate messages in lightning strikes, but also prophecies extending far into the future. His most famous prediction allegedly foretold the eventual Roman conquest of Etruscan territories, reading this destiny in a series of lightning strikes that occurred during a violent storm on the winter solstice. Archaeological evidence supports the importance of lightning interpretation in Etruscan culture. Bronze figurines depicting priests holding specialized instruments have been found at religious sites throughout central Italy. These objects, often showing where patterns consistent with regular use, appear to be tools for measuring angles and directions during storm observations. Chemical analysis of some bronze artifacts reveals traces of substances that may have been used to attract or deflect electrical charges during dangerous observation sessions. The relationship between fog and political authority was particularly close in Etruscan society. Kings and magistrates required divine approval for major decisions, often obtained through interpretation of lightning omens. Military campaigns, construction projects, treaty negotiations, and succession disputes all involved consultation with lightning readers who could determine whether the gods favored proposed actions. This system created a checks and balances mechanism where religious authority could override political decisions based on divine disapproval expressed through storm phenomena. Roman historians describe several instances where Etruscan fulgurology accurately predicted significant historical events. One account tells of lightning strikes that warned of impending military defeat, causing Etruscan armies to withdraw from battles they would certainly have lost. Another describes storm omens that predicted the death of a king, leading to succession preparations that ensured smooth political transitions. While such stories may have been embellished over time, their consistent appearance in Roman sources suggests that Etruscan lightning interpretation was indeed remarkably effective. The technical aspects of fulgurology required sophisticated understanding of meteorology and atmospheric physics. Etruscan lightning readers apparently recognized that different types of storms produced different patterns of electrical activity, and they incorporated this knowledge into their interpretive systems. They understood seasonal variations in storm frequency and intensity, regional differences in lightning patterns, and the relationship between atmospheric conditions and electrical phenomena. The decline of Etruscan fulgurology began with Roman conquest, but proceeded gradually as traditional knowledge was integrated into Roman religious practices. Roman augurs adopted some Etruscan techniques for interpreting lightning omens, but they lacked the sophisticated theoretical framework and generational training that had made Etruscan practitioners so effective. By the imperial period, lightning interpretation had become a simplified practice focused mainly on determining favorable or unfavorable omens for specific occasions. The psychological dimensions of futurology deserve consideration alongside its technical and religious aspects. Lightning readers operated under intense pressure, knowing that their interpretations could influence major political and military decisions affecting thousands of people. This responsibility required not only technical expertise, but also the psychological resilience to make confident judgments based on rapidly changing atmospheric phenomena. The altered states of consciousness induced by storm observation may have enhanced practitioners' intuitive abilities, contributing to their reputation for supernatural insight. Modern meteorological knowledge allows us to understand some aspects of what Etruscan futurology might have accomplished through careful observation and record-keeping. Experienced observers could indeed predict certain the royal tombs and their eternal guardians deep beneath the rolling hills of Sepultura. Elaborate tomb chambers house the remains of Etruscan kings and queens who ruled central Italy over 2 millennia ago. These underground palaces, carved from solid rock and decorated with vivid frescoes, were designed not merely as burial places, but as eternal residences where deceased rulers continued to exercise authority over their kingdoms from beyond the grave. The tombs reveal a sophisticated understanding of death and afterlife that distinguished Etruscan culture from their Greek and Roman neighbors. The Banditarchian necropolis at Cerveteri contains over 1,000 tombs spanning several centuries of Etruscan civilization. The largest and most elaborate belong to royal families, identifiable by their monumental architecture, precious grave goods, and complex interior layouts that mirror the palaces of living rulers. These tombs were not simply repositories for the dead, but active centers of ongoing ritual activity where living descendants maintained relationships with their deceased ancestors. Archaeological excavations have revealed that royal tombs were periodically opened for ceremonies involving food offerings, libations, and ritual communications with the deceased. Bronze vessels found within burial chambers show evidence of repeated use, suggesting that the dead were regularly provided with fresh provisions and wine. Stone dining couches arranged around central hearths indicate that family members held banquets within the tombs, sharing meals with their departed relatives in elaborate ceremonies that could last for days. The tomb paintings at Cerveteri and other Etruscan sites provide unprecedented insights into beliefs about death and the afterlife. Unlike Greek depictions of the underworld as a gloomy realm of shadows, Etruscan tomb art shows the deceased enjoying elaborate banquets, athletic competitions, and musical performances. These images suggest that Etruscans viewed death not as an end to earthly pleasures, but as a transition to a more refined existence where spiritual beings continued to participate in idealized versions of mortal activities. The alleged Volterra tablets contained descriptions of royal burial ceremonies that supposedly ensured the deceased ruler's continued influence over earthly affairs. According to the fragmentary translations, these rituals involved the symbolic transfer of royal authority from the dying king to his successor, while simultaneously establishing the deceased monarch as an eternal guardian of the kingdom. The ceremonies allegedly lasted for weeks, culminating in elaborate processions that carried the royal remains through the entire territory under the king's authority. One of the most mysterious aspects of Etruscan royal tombs is their apparent function as communication centers where living rulers could consult with deceased predecessors. Several tombs contain chambers specifically designed for such interactions, equipped with stone thrones for living visitors and elaborate altars for offerings to the dead. Bronze mirrors found in these chambers may have been used to facilitate visions or supernatural communications during ritual consultations. The tomb of the Regalina Galassi family, discovered in the 19th century, contained grave goods indicating the highest levels of political and religious authority. Gold crowns, ivory scepters, bronze mirrors, and hundreds of precious objects accompanied the deceased into the afterlife. Most remarkably, the tomb contained bronze tablets inscribed with what appear to be governmental decrees, suggesting that the dead rulers continued to issue official pronouncements from their burial chambers. The engineering achievement represented by these royal tombs demonstrates sophisticated understanding of architecture and construction techniques. The largest chambers span multiple rooms connected by corridors and stairways, all carved from solid volcanic rock with precision that rivals modern stoneworking capabilities. Drainage systems prevented water accumulation, ventilation shafts provided air circulation, and carefully calculated weight distributions prevented structural collapse over the centuries. The role of tomb guardians, both supernatural and human, was central to Etruscan concepts of death and burial. Painted demons and divine figures decorating tomb walls were believed to protect the deceased from malevolent spirits while facilitating their transition to the afterlife. Living guardians, often drawn from hereditary priestly families, maintained the tombs and conducted ongoing ceremonies that honored the dead and preserved their memory for future generations. Archaeological evidence indicates that some royal tombs remained active ceremonial centers for centuries after the original burials. Later, rulers added their own remains to family tombs, expanded existing chambers, and commissioned new decorative programs that reflected evolving religious beliefs. This continuity of use demonstrates the enduring importance of ancestral authority. In Etruscan political and religious systems, the decline of royal tomb ceremonies began with Roman conquest, but proceeded gradually as traditional beliefs were replaced by Roman funerary practices. Roman attitudes toward death emphasized permanent separation between the living and the dead, discouraging the ongoing ritual interactions that had characterized Etruscan burial customs. Many tombs were sealed permanently during the Roman period, ending centuries of ceremonial activity and ancestral consultation. The rediscovery of Etruscan royal tombs during the Renaissance and later archaeological periods revealed treasures that astonished scholars and collectors. However, early excavations often focused on recovering valuable objects rather than understanding cultural contexts, resulting in the loss of crucial information about burial practices and religious beliefs. Modern archaeological techniques have provided new insights into tomb functions and ceremonies, but much knowledge was irretrievably lost during earlier, less careful investigations. The psychological impact of these elaborate burial preparations must have been profound for Etruscan society. The knowledge that death was not an ending but a transformation to continued existence in underground palaces may have reduced fear and anxiety about mortality while encouraging careful attention to moral behavior that would determine one's status in the afterlife. The ongoing presence of deceased rulers as eternal guardians provided continuity and stability in political systems that might otherwise have been disrupted by succession crises. The artistic achievement of tomb decorations represents some of the finest examples of ancient Mediterranean painting. The frescoes combine technical sophistication with emotional expressiveness, creating images that continue to move modern viewers with their beauty and vitality. The persistence of organic pigments over to millennia demonstrates advanced understanding of chemical processes and material preservation techniques that were lost during later periods. The influence of Etruscan burial practices extended throughout. The Roman world, as conquered territories, adopted modified versions of traditional ceremonies. Roman mausoleums and family tombs incorporated architectural elements derived from Etruscan prototypes, while Roman funeral rituals retained ceremonies that originated in Etruscan religious traditions. This cultural continuity ensured that aspects of Etruscan beliefs about death and afterlife survival survived long after their political independence ended. Modern visitors to Etruscan necropolises often report unusual atmospheric phenomena, unexplained temperature changes, strange acoustic effects, and visual disturbances that may result from the unique architectural properties of underground chambers. Whether these effects have the divine mirrors and visions of immortality in the quiet sanctuaries of Etruscan temples. Priests carefully polished bronze mirrors to perfect reflectivity, preparing sacred instruments that would reveal visions hidden from ordinary sight. These mirrors, thousands of which survive in modern museum collections, served purposes far beyond simple personal grooming or vanity. They were windows into divine realms, tools for communication with gods and spirits, and focal points for ritual practices that connected mortal worshippers with immortal powers governing the universe. Etruscan mirrors differ significantly from their Greek and Roman counterparts in both artistic decoration and apparent function. While Mediterranean cultures typically used mirrors primarily for personal appearance, Etruscan examples often bear elaborate mythological scenes on their reverse sides, featuring gods, heroes, and supernatural beings engaged in activities that seem to relate to divination and prophecy. These decorative programs suggest that the mirrors served ceremonial rather than purely practical purposes. The bronze composition of Etruscan mirrors was carefully controlled to achieve optimal reflective properties for ritual use. Chemical analysis reveals precise alloy ratios that maximized light reflection while maintaining durability over extended periods. The polishing techniques employed by Etruscan craftsmen created surfaces so smooth that they could reflect clear images even by the flickering light of oil lamps used in temple ceremonies. This technical sophistication indicates that mirror production was a specialized craft, requiring advanced metallurgical knowledge. Archaeological excavations at Etruscan religious sites have revealed mirrors in contexts suggesting their use in divination ceremonies. Bronze mirrors found near temple altars often show wear patterns consistent with frequent handling during ritual activities. Some examples retain traces of aromatic substances, possibly incense or oils used to enhance the sacred atmosphere during mirror-gazing sessions. The positioning of mirrors within temple layouts suggests they were oriented to capture and reflect specific types of light during particular ceremonies. The alleged Volterra tablets described mirror rituals conducted by King Velcacna and his priests during communication ceremonies with the god Tinia. According to the fragmentary translations, these rituals involved positioning polished bronze mirrors to capture the first rays of sunlight entering sacred groves at dawn. The reflected light allegedly created visual effects that priests interpreted as divine messages or visions of future events. The mirrors served as focusing devices for natural phenomena that were understood as supernatural communications. The iconography decorating Etruscan mirrors provides insights into their religious significance. Many examples show scenes of divine consultation, with mortal figures observing reflections that reveal supernatural beings or prophetic visions. Gods and goddesses are frequently depicted holding or gazing into mirrors, suggesting that these objects facilitated divine sight and supernatural knowledge. The consistent appearance of mirror motifs in religious contexts indicates their central importance in Etruscan spiritual practices. The training required to use mirrors effectively in religious ceremonies involved both technical skills and spiritual preparation. Priests had to learn proper positioning techniques to achieve desired optical effects, while also developing the mental disciplines necessary for interpreting visions that appeared in reflected images. The combination of physical manipulation and psychological focus created altered states of consciousness that practitioners believed enabled direct communication with divine beings. Roman sources describe Etruscan mirror divination as remarkably accurate in predicting future events. Historical accounts mention instances where mirror visions warned of military defeats, predicted the outcomes of political negotiations, and revealed the locations of valuable resources or hidden treasures. While such stories may have been embellished over time, their consistent appearance in Roman literature suggests that Etruscan mirror practices were indeed considered effective by contemporary observers. The decline of mirror divination began with Roman conquest but continued in modified forms throughout the imperial period. Roman religious authorities incorporated some Etruscan mirror techniques into their own ceremonies, though they lacked the sophisticated theoretical frameworks and specialized training that had made Etruscan practitioners so skilled. By the Christian period, mirror divination was increasingly viewed as superstition or demonic practice, leading to the abandonment of traditional techniques. The psychological mechanisms underlying mirror divination deserve careful consideration. Extended gazing into reflective surfaces can indeed induce altered states of consciousness characterized by visual hallucinations, heightened intuition, and enhanced pattern recognition abilities. These psychological effects, combined with cultural expectations and religious training, may have enabled practitioners to access insights unavailable through ordinary observation. The effectiveness of mirror divination could have resulted from heightened awareness rather than supernatural intervention. The artistic quality of surviving Etruscan mirrors demonstrates sophisticated understanding of both metallurgy and decorative techniques. The engraved scenes on mirror backs required specialized tools and considerable skill to execute, while the reflective surfaces needed precise polishing to achieve ritual effectiveness. This combination of technical expertise and artistic achievement indicates that mirror production was both a craft specialty and a religious vocation. Requiring years of training and practice, the influence of Etruscan mirror practices extended throughout the ancient Mediterranean world as Roman expansion carried modified versions of these techniques to distant provinces. Archaeological evidence of ritual mirrors appears in Roman sites from Britain to Egypt, often adapted to local religious traditions while retaining essential features derived from Etruscan prototypes. This cultural diffusion ensured that aspects of Etruscan divination survived long after their political independence ended. Modern attempts to understand Etruscan mirror divination have been hampered by the loss of oral traditions that accompanied the physical objects. While we possess hundreds of actual mirrors and can analyze their construction and decoration, the specific techniques for using them in religious ceremonies were never written down and disappeared with the practitioners who employed them. Archaeological evidence provides glimpses of ritual contexts, but the actual process of reading visions in bronze reflections remains largely mysterious. The symbolic associations of mirrors with divine sight and supernatural knowledge appear throughout ancient Mediterranean cultures, but reached particular sophistication in Etruscan religious practices. The ability to see beyond normal visual limitations, to perceive future events and divine messages, was considered one of the most valuable spiritual gifts available to human beings. Mirrors served as technological aids for achieving this enhanced perception, bridging the gap between mortal limitations and divine omniscience. The preservation of so many Etruscan mirrors in tombs and religious deposits indicates their continued importance even after death. Many examples were buried with their owners, suggesting belief that mirror divination remained useful in the afterlife. Others were deposited in temple foundations or sacred springs as offerings to deities, indicating their value as gifts worthy of divine acceptance. This pattern of deposition ensured the survival of mirrors that might otherwise have been lost through recycling or destruction. The connection between mirrors and concepts of immortality appears frequently in Etruscan religious art and funerary practices. Reflective surfaces were understood as windows into eternal realms, revealing aspects of existence that transcended mortal limitations. The deceased were often buried with mirrors that would enable them to maintain visual contact with the living world while adapting to their new spiritual environment. The final kings and the fading of divine authorities. Dawn breaks over the hills of central Italy in the 3rd century BCE. The last Etruscan kings prepare for ceremonies that their ancestors had conducted for over 5 centuries. But now the rituals carry a different weight, tinged with the knowledge that their divine authority faces challenges from a growing power to the south. Rome's expansion has already absorbed many Etruscan cities, and the traditional bonds between gods and mortal rulers seem to weaken with each passing year. Yet still the ceremonies continue, performed with desperate hope that divine intervention might yet preserve their ancient way of life. The transformation of Etruscan kingship during the final centuries of independence reflects broader changes. In Mediterranean political and religious systems, where once kings had ruled by unquestioned divine mandate, they now faced practical pressures that traditional religious authority could not easily address. Roman military superiority, economic competition, and cultural influence gradually eroded the foundations of Etruscan political power, forcing kings to adapt their roles while trying to maintain essential religious functions. Archaeological evidence from late Etruscan sites reveals attempts to revitalize traditional religious practices during periods of political crisis. Temple renovations, expanded ritual facilities, and increased votive offerings suggest that communities invested heavily in religious activities, perhaps hoping that enhanced divine favor might protect them from Roman conquest. However, these efforts appear to have been ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the gradual absorption of Etruscan territories into the Roman Republic. The alleged Volterra tablets, if they truly existed, may have contained prophecies about the end of Etruscan independence and the transition to Roman rule. According to the rumored translations, these texts described a predetermined cycle of divine favor that would eventually shift from Etruscan to Roman authority. The knowledge that their political dominance was temporarily limited may have influenced Etruscan responses to Roman expansion, contributing to their relatively peaceful surrender of power in many cases. The last independent Etruscan king whose name survives in historical records was Velcacna of Volterra, possibly the same ruler mentioned in the mysterious tablets discovered in the 1960s. Roman sources describe him as a formidable opponent who resisted Roman expansion for several decades during the 3rd century BCE. His resistance was based not only on military strength, but also on claims that the gods had not yet granted. Romans' legitimate authority over Etruscan sacred sites and religious practices. The siege of Volterra by Roman forces represented more than a military conquest. It was a confrontation between different concepts of political legitimacy and divine authority. Romans viewed their expansion as justified by military superiority and political necessity, while Etruscans defended their independence based on traditional religious obligations and divine mandates that predated Roman power. The eventual Roman victory marked not only political defeat, but also the end of a religious system that had governed central Italy for centuries. The integration of Etruscan religious practices into Roman culture proceeded gradually as practical. Romans recognized the value of traditional ceremonies and divination techniques. Etruscan haruspices continued to serve Roman leaders. Etruscan architectural principles influenced Roman temple construction, and Etruscan concepts of divine kingship contributed to the development of imperial authority. However, these adaptations represented fragments of a larger system rather than the complete preservation of Etruscan religious culture. The psychological impact of losing divine kingship must have been profound for Etruscan communities that had organized their entire social and political systems around sacred authority. The knowledge that their gods had apparently transferred favor to Roman rulers challenged fundamental assumptions about cosmic order and divine justice. Some communities may have interpreted Roman conquest as divine punishment for ritual failures or moral shortcomings, while others may have concluded that their gods were simply less powerful than Roman deities. The role of Etruscan women in preserving religious traditions during the transition period deserves special attention. Unlike Roman society, which restricted women's participation in public religious ceremonies, Etruscan culture allowed women significant roles in ritual activities and religious leadership. As traditional male authority structures collapsed under Roman pressure, Etruscan women may have become primary custodians of cultural knowledge and religious practices that might otherwise have been completely lost. The gradual disappearance of Etruscan language and literacy contributed to the loss of religious knowledge that had been preserved in written form. As younger generations adopted Latin for practical communication and official business, the specialized vocabulary and complex concepts of Etruscan religious texts became increasingly inaccessible. The oral traditions that had supplemented written sources also declined as traditional family structures were disrupted by political changes and population movements. The transformation of Etruscan sacred sites under Roman administration reveals changing attitudes toward religious authority and divine presence. The echo of ancient mysteries as our journey through the lost world of the Etruscans draws to a close. We find ourselves standing at the edge of historical memory, where documented facts fade into whispered legends and archaeological fragments hint at knowledge that may never be fully recovered. The morning light that now illuminates the hills of central Italy has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the transformation of sacred groves into agricultural fields, and the gradual silencing of voices that once spoke directly with gods. The questions that drew us into this exploration remain largely unanswered. What became of the mysterious tablets discovered near Volterra? Did King Velcagna truly receive divine visions in sacred groves? How accurate were the prophecies contained in the Etrusca Disciplina? Where did the sophisticated knowledge of Etruscan priests disappear when their civilization was absorbed into the Roman world? These mysteries continue to haunt the archaeological record, tantalizing researchers with glimpses of understanding that always seem to slip away just as they become clear the legacy of Etruscan civilization extends far beyond the boundaries of ancient Italy. Their influence on Roman culture shaped the development of Western civilization in ways that continue to affect our modern world. The architectural principles they developed guided the construction of buildings throughout the Roman Empire. Their religious practices influenced the development of Roman state religion, and through Roman adoption, affected the later emergence of Christian ceremonial traditions. Their political concepts contributed to Roman ideas about authority and governance that would eventually influence European concepts of monarchy and state power. Perhaps most intriguingly, their approach to the relationship between divine and mortal realms offered an alternative to the more familiar Greek and Roman models that dominated classical antiquity. The Etruscan belief in direct communication between gods and humans, the integration of religious and political authority, and the understanding of natural phenomena as divine messages, created a worldview that was both sophisticated and deeply spiritual. This perspective, largely lost when Etruscan culture disappeared, might offer valuable insights for contemporary discussions about the relationship between spiritual experience and practical governance. The archaeological record continues to yield new discoveries that add pieces to the puzzle of Etruscan civilization. Recent excavations have revealed previously unknown sites. Advanced dating techniques have refined our understanding of chronological developments and improved translation. Methods have provided new insights into Etruscan inscriptions. Each discovery raises new questions while answering old ones, ensuring that the mystery of Etruscan culture will continue to engage researchers for generations to come. The persistence of local legends in central Italy suggests that memories of Etruscan civilization survived in folk traditions long after their political independence ended. Stories of underground chambers, sacred groves, and mysterious ceremonies, passed down through generations of rural families, may preserve authentic elements of ancient practices. While these oral traditions must be evaluated carefully, they provide potential clues about aspects of Etruscan culture that left no archaeological traces. The psychological appeal of Etruscan mysteries extends beyond academic interest to touch something deeper in human nature. Their apparent ability to communicate directly with divine beings, to read the future in natural phenomena, and to maintain harmony between earthly and spiritual realms addresses fundamental human desires for meaning, guidance, and transcendence. The loss of their knowledge represents more than historical curiosity. It symbolizes the broader human experience of losing touch with spiritual dimensions of existence that once seemed natural and accessible. The technological achievements of Etruscan civilization deserve recognition alongside their religious and political accomplishments. Their engineering skills in underground construction, their metallurgical expertise in bronze working, their astronomical knowledge for temple alignment, and their hydrological understanding for urban planning all demonstrate sophisticated technical capabilities. These achievements remind us that ancient peoples possessed practical knowledge and skills that we should not underestimate or dismiss as primitive. The artistic legacy of Etruscan culture provides our most direct contact with their worldview and daily experience. The vivid tomb paintings, elegant bronze mirrors, sophisticated jewelry, and expressive sculptures speak across millennia about human concerns that remain recognizable today. Their artistic vision, combining technical skill with spiritual insight, offers inspiration for contemporary artists and designers who seek to integrate aesthetic beauty with deeper meaning. The influence of Etruscan culture on later historical developments may be more extensive than currently recognized. Recent research has identified possible Etruscan elements in medieval Italian art, Renaissance architectural theory, and even modern Italian cultural practices. The continuity of certain traditions, while difficult to trace definitively, suggests that aspects of Etruscan civilization may have survived in transformed states long after their political extinction. The international character of current Etruscan research brings together scholars from many countries and disciplines, creating collaborative investigations that transcend national boundaries and academic specializations. Archaeologists, linguists, historians, anthropologists, and scientists work together to reconstruct various aspects of Etruscan civilization, demonstrating how complex historical questions require multiple perspectives and methodological approaches. The preservation and presentation of Etruscan sites for public education represents an ongoing challenge that requires balancing archaeological protection with cultural accessibility. Museums throughout the world display Etruscan artifacts, while site parks in Italy allow visitors to experience reconstructed tombs and urban layouts. These educational efforts help ensure that knowledge about Etruscan civilization reaches broader audiences beyond academic specialists. The digital revolution has created new opportunities for Etruscan research through virtual reconstructions, database integration, and online collaboration among international research teams. Computer modeling allows archaeologists to test hypotheses about ancient construction techniques, while digital archives make rare inscriptions and artifacts accessible to scholars worldwide. These technological tools are revealing new patterns and connections that might not have been apparent through traditional research methods. The continuing discovery of Etruscan sites and artifacts reminds us that much remains unknown about their civilization. Ground-penetrating radar surveys regularly identify new underground structures, while construction projects occasionally uncover previously unknown tombs and settlements. Each discovery has the potential to significantly alter our understanding of Etruscan culture, ensuring that the story of their civilization continues to evolve as new evidence emerges. As we conclude our journey through the mysterious world of the Etruscans, we carry with us an appreciation for the complexity and sophistication of their achievements. Their integration of spiritual insight with practical governance, their artistic vision combined with technical expertise, and their understanding of natural phenomena as divine communication created a civilization that was both distinctive and influential. While many of their secrets remain hidden, their legacy continues to enrich our understanding of human possibility and cultural achievement. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of ancient mysteries that continue to whisper across the centuries. The Etruscans remind us that history holds more wonders than we often imagine, and that the past continues to offer insights and inspiration for those willing to listen carefully to its quiet voices. May your dreams tonight carry you to sacred groves where ancient wisdom still echoes, and may you find in sleep the peaceful rest that comes from touching, however briefly, the eternal mysteries that connect all human experience across time. Rest well and sleep peacefully.